Welcome to the Beyond Bloated Podcast. I'm Carly, a certified health coach helping women ditch their bloat without having to follow super strict and stressful protocols. As someone who's struggled with all sorts of digestive issues for over 5 years, I know exactly how you're feeling. I also know that there's a way to feel better, and it doesn't have to involve tons of expensive supplements and insanely restrictive diets. Join me as I share all of my bloat-busting wisdom to help you say goodbye to that bloated belly and regain your confidence. It's time for you to move beyond bloated. Looking back at my 5-year gut health journey, I can now see that I did a lot of guessing. Not just me, but my practitioners also did a lot of guessing. I'm talking the doctors, naturopaths, nutritionists, all the different practitioners that I saw were guessing. They were guessing about what was causing my symptoms and what would ultimately solve them, which would explain why it took more than 5 years for me to find relief. If you are also someone who has tried several different protocols or restrictive diets without any real evidence to base it off of, you are going to be very interested in what today's guest has to say. Maryanne is a certified nutritionist and gut health expert who also experienced a lot of guessing during her 7-year battle with bloating and constipation. She found that even though she was doing all the things, she wasn't finding relief. Until one day, she stumbled upon something called the GI map test. In today's episode, Maryanne shares her long and exhausting gut health journey and how it could have been so much shorter if she had learned about the GI map test earlier. She will also give us some insight into what exactly this test can show us about our gut and how she creates individualized protocols for her clients based on their unique results. If you feel completely stuck in your gut health journey and want to know exactly what is going on inside that gut of yours, stick around and listen up. Welcome to the podcast, Maryanne. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to dive into our conversation today. And I know we talked a little bit before, and we seem to be so aligned in kind of what we do and our stories. So I'm excited to dive into that.
Yes, I totally agree. So on that note, if you could start by telling everyone a little bit about your backstory, your origin story, and how it got you started in the gut health realm.
Yes, it was a long journey. So I struggled with gut issues back in, it would have been around 2016 that they started. It was around when I was in university. And at that point, like a lot of people in college and university, I lived not a great lifestyle. My diet was not amazing. And I always just felt like not great. I felt like crap all the time. I was tired. I was started to get constantly bloated. And like when you're at that age, going out, clubbing, wearing like crop tops and everything like that, it's not a great time to have that sort of thing go on. Gut issues and gut health weren't very much a conversation back then. It wasn't something that was readily available online or on social media. So I just kind of kept it to myself. It wasn't anything that I really addressed with friends or family or things like that. I just assumed that it was normal and something that everyone kind of dealt with. It wasn't until I really started to experience these issues for years at this point where I was like, okay, I really should kind of get this looked at. So I went to my doctor who had me do a colonoscopy and endoscopy. Everything came back inconclusive, and I just got the wastebasket diagnosis of IBS, which so many people get. Like I hear this story constantly with my clients, and my doctor just kind of handed me a pamphlet on the low FODMAP diet, kind of told me to go on my way, and I took that diet and ran with it. I followed that diet for, I hate to say, I followed it for probably 3 years, which like we know, like that is so bad. But no one advised me on like the proper way to follow it and how to reintroduce foods and some of the underlying conditions that can be going on and causing symptoms rather than just have it be IBS alone. And it's not that I don't think IBS isn't a legitimate diagnosis. I just think that there's so much else that's going on and that needs to be further investigated and looked into. For me, I'm very much a type A personality. So the nervous system has a huge impact on how my digestive system functions. And I knew that. but nothing I was doing was working. And once I really started to dabble into health and wellness and build what I thought was a pretty good foundation, where I was eating a good diet, I wasn't partying all the time and all of this like I was in university, and still my symptoms were not improving. I was bloated after everything I ate. I used to get really bad like cramping. I had really bad constipation to the point where I didn't have a bowel movement for 30 days. Yeah, it was brutal. I struggled with constipation on and off, and this one incident just it was 30 days. I think I went to the hospital at the 2-week mark, and they had given me laxatives and everything. They gave me enemas. Nothing was working. By a month, I was admitted, and they had to give me fluids to kind of loosen everything up. But needless to say, I struggled a lot with motility, especially. And then, yeah, the bloating, abdominal pain, all of those sort of things. When I thought that I had kind of cleaned up my diet and put in healthy lifestyle habits and things were working, I got so frustrated because I was like, I'm doing everything right. Why is my body working against me? Why am I not getting to those milestones of like being able to feel quote unquote normal again? And it wasn't until I really started to hear the conversation of gut health and nutrition start to circulate online where I was like, okay, maybe there's something else. There's something deeper here. Like maybe there's something else that I should be looking into. And I kind of like got into a rabbit hole on it. And it was just right when everyone started kind of talking about it online. And I became obsessed and I wanted to learn everything about it. And when I started working with a naturopath, I was honestly a little discouraged because I've heard this a lot too, and not all naturopaths are the same, but I kind of got the feeling of them being more so like a green doctor, where they weren't really like paying attention to my symptoms and like things that could be going on. They more so just looked at, okay, this is how you're feeling. These are supplements instead of medications to take. We weren't really looking at other factors, like looking at the bigger picture altogether. They kind of made assumptions. They would be like, okay, I suspect that there might be candida overgrowth going on. And it's like, okay, so we would do a candida cleanse. I would notice some improvements, but then again, my symptoms would come right back. I would go to a different naturopath and I was like, I did a candida cleanse. It didn't really work. What do we try next? And then this naturopath was like, oh, well, maybe it's SIBO. So we do a SIBO protocol. Again, maybe like minor relief, but then my symptoms would come back weeks, maybe months later. I was just stuck in this vicious cycle of like people telling me what was wrong, but then I was like, I don't have any concrete evidence as to what's actually going on in my body. And that's where I really dove into functional testing. And I was like, I use the medical system to my advantage. I ran every test with my doctor just to make sure and be like, these are all the tests that I can get done. And just to see if there's any imbalances, see if there's IBD, like diverticulitis, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, all of those things. Were there significant imbalances in my blood work, things like that. And every test I ran came back normal. So I was like, I need to look into this further. And that's where I went into functional stool testing. And it was just like such an aha moment to be able to see what was going on in my gut microbiome and being like, this makes so much sense. I studied to become a nutritionist at this point, so I could interpret it. It was just such an aha moment. It was like, now my symptoms make sense. There's a reason for why I'm feeling this way. It's not just something random that's going on in my body or something that I just have to make some dietary tweaks and it'll be good, or cut a bunch of foods out of my diet. It was like, there are specific imbalances. There are things in my gut that need to be fixed. And as soon as I addressed those and really had a concrete plan as to what was going on. So on my test, particularly, I did have candida actually, but I did a candida cleanse and I guess it must not have gotten it all. But I did have candida. I had dysbiosis. I had really low levels of beneficial bacteria, which I found was super interesting because, as you know, with a low FODMAP diet, you don't eat a lot of fermented foods. And I found that fermented foods and probiotic foods were making me a lot more bloated. When I saw that my beneficial bacteria was really low, I was like, that makes so much sense because I've been avoiding those foods and I never took a probiotic because I took one once years ago and it made me feel worse. So I just assumed that wasn't for me. Being able to see all of those things was just so eye-opening for me. And I think that's when I really noticed a shift and a turning point when it comes to all of the issues that I had been experiencing. And at that point, I think I was experiencing them for like 7 years.
Wow.
It was a long time.
Yeah. I can totally relate. And that's a crazy story. First of all, we need to address the elephant in the room here. 30 days without a bowel movement. Oh my God, you poor girl. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was possible. That sucks. And it sucks that you weren't able to get help before that happened or even during that happening. Like you went 2 weeks in and was like, hey, something's kind of weird here, but that's incredible. And also funny because not funny, but I've done several of these interviews now with people that have similar stories to me and you, and we all start the same. We go away to university, we party, we drink, we eat terribly, we're stressed because, we're doing exams and stuff at the same time, we don't sleep, and then that triggers it. So, this is like my own research project through my podcast. It's like the study of what is causing these problems. And it's obviously, diet and lifestyle. And it seems to happen when you go away to school. That's like, we're going away, we've got all this freedom, we're about to ruin our lives, and we do. So that is crazy that it happens to so many of us. And then, we try to get the help, don't get it. And for us few that are very determined, and I mean, I do feel like we're lucky in a way because we have that drive and motivation. And in my case, I had the time as well to investigate these things. So
Absolutely.
I wasn't willing to accept like, no, you just have to live like this, or you have to take this medication forever. I was like, no, there's no way. So, we dive into it and we figure out that there's this whole other realm of healthcare that actually addresses the root. But as to your point, I felt the same about naturopaths, and it took me a while to realize it because, I was brand new. And when I went to see the naturopath, they were better than the doctor that I was seeing, right? So it was like, hey, this is kind of an improvement. I mean, doing low FODMAP for 3 years, that's impressive.
It was a challenge. I was the worst dinner date ever. Like I would go through the menu, waitresses hated me. I was like, can we take all of these out? And it was a nightmare. Looking back, I can't believe I did it for that long.
For those of you who aren't familiar with low FODMAP, it is, in my opinion, the most restrictive diet. I've done a lot of them, and I think low FODMAP is by far the most restrictive. It's basically any food that causes fermentation in your gut is like how I like to simplify it, and pretty much all of them.
The list is long.
Yeah, like I did it for 3 weeks. So you did it for 3 years.
Got a taste.
Oh, incredible. But anyway, actually, question for you. Did you find relief doing the low FODMAP diet, or were you just doing it in hopes that you would eventually find relief?
Hey everyone, Carly here. If you are tired of feeling bloated and uncomfortable, which I know you are, I have something that can really help. My free ultimate guide to bloat busting. I've been there myself, and I know how frustrating it is to try super restrictive diets and expensive supplements without getting results. If those methods were going to work, they would have worked by now. That's why I created this guide to offer you a different approach. In the ultimate guide to bloat busting, you'll learn techniques to listen to your body and eat with intention, avoiding overeating and choosing foods that truly benefit you, tips for proper hydration to support digestion and reduce bloating, a guide to delicious foods that promote a healthy gut and how to easily incorporate them into your meals, and effective methods to manage stress, which plays a huge role in gut health. These simple, practical strategies can make a big difference in your daily life, helping you feel lighter, more energized, and comfortable in your own skin. Ready to ditch the bloat without strict diets or costly supplements? Download your free copy today at beyondbloated.com/ultimate-guide and start your journey to a bloat-free life. Now, let's get back to it.
It's a good question. So I actually did. I did notice improvements in my symptoms. And I think I just held on to that. And I think it might have been, it was so long ago now, I think it might have been where I noticed improvements in my symptoms. It definitely wasn't major, but slight improvements. And then I just held on to that. And anytime I maybe slipped up and ate a high FODMAP food or even thought about reintroducing something into my diet, it terrified me because I was I made, let's say, 20% improvements in how I feel. I don't want to regress. So I just held on to that for 3 years, I guess. And it wasn't until I basically started really investigating and learning all about the gut where I was okay, I don't think I needed to do that for 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what you know now, doing a very restrictive diet like that for long term can actually do more damage than good. But
Absolutely.
a lot of us don't know that, and it's not our fault. Your doctor told you to do it. So of course you're going to do it, and you're not educated because it's not your job to be educated. So you're going to believe them, you're going to do it. But yeah, it can cause more damage than good because you're depriving your body of tons of different nutrients. Plus it's the stress, right? You were stressed about going out to eat and messing up, and that plays so much of a role in our digestive issues, like you said earlier. So that's insane. I'm impressed, but also bad for you that you had to do that for so long. I also actually had a GI map test done, and it's crazy the amount of information you get from those. I love data. I'm a numbers girl. When I saw this is all the information you can get from doing this test, I was all right, let's do it. So could you please explain in more detail what exactly the GI map tests and just more about it, really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly such an aha moment, especially when you've been dealing with symptoms for so long and you just don't have those answers. So the GI map test is a functional stool test. So it looks at your gut microbiome. So it's looking at factors that are in your large intestine and colon. So basically, it looks at things, it looks at your bacteria levels. So it looks at keystone bacteria, which is the good bacteria that live in your microbiome. And it also looks at opportunistic bacteria, which are bad bacteria that can overgrow in the large intestine. But then it also tests for a number of different things like pathogens, parasites, viruses, and it also gives you intestinal markers as well. So it can kind of give an indication of how well your digestive system is functioning. So it can show you things like pancreatic function based on enzyme output, secretin, which looks at bile flow, so how well your body is digesting fats. It looks at other things too, like leaky gut. So it's able to give an indication of gut permeability, which is basically the tight junctions in your gut that keep everything in your GI tract where it's supposed to be. But when these tight junctions kind of start to wear down, these things like undigested food particles, bacteria, pathogens, they can start to enter into your bloodstream. So that's the term leaky gut. So there's a marker on there that can give an indication of the gut permeability. There's so much insight that it can give you. And a lot of the time, it's not just one thing. It's not you to get a GI map test. It can happen. It's rare, but it's very unlikely that it's one thing that comes back and it's oh, we just need to focus on candida. And that's why I'm so hesitant. And I don't think that approach to healing, especially when there's practitioners and everything out there that go based on symptoms alone, because a lot of the time you can have candida and it presents as candida, absolutely. But what about other things that are going on? Is there H. pylori present? What are their beneficial bacteria levels like? Is there any dysbiosis? Is there bacterial overgrowth going on? What's leaky gut looking like? Because in my experience, when I was trying to heal my gut, all of the factors that were addressed did end up coming back positive on my test, but they weren't addressed simultaneously. They weren't addressed in a way where they were targeted and followed through a proper treatment plan. So that's where it was yes, a lot of the things that I worked on were right, but we didn't target them in kind of like the right order or the right treatment plan. I see that so often because I have clients come to me and be like, well, I did all of these cleanses or detoxes or whatever, but there's so much that can be going on in the gut. And there's one thing that can kind of set everything off. And that's where a lot of people can get stuck in this vicious cycle, because if there's one thing that you miss, it can kind of be the catalyst for everything coming back. And that's where you can do the cleanses, do the detoxes, but then you notice your symptoms kind of come back a couple months later.
I totally agree. Like, the gut is crazy complex, and it's hard to honestly comprehend what is going on down there because it doesn't seem like a large space, but so much is happening. And I found when I did my GI map, I ordered it myself. And at this point, like, I had a lot of knowledge on gut health. And so I was like, I can probably interpret this pretty well myself. So I got it, and going through it, there were some pretty clear markers that I was like, okay, something's weird here. But I decided, like, I'm going to take this to a naturopath because I want a second opinion. Like, I want someone else to look at it too. They didn't really tell me much. Like, they're like, honestly, overall, it looks pretty good. Yeah. Like, I went to 2 different naturopaths with it. And
oh my
they
God.
were like, yeah, they were like, you could maybe use a little more probiotics or whatever. And I was like, okay. And then just, I would say in the last 6 months, I pulled it out again and I was like, I'm doing this myself. Like, did all this research on it. I watched videos and I went through it. And clear as day, now that I've done all the research on it, I have very low stomach acid. Like, I have all the signs and symptoms of someone with low stomach acid. And I was like, why didn't anybody tell me that? So it's crucial that if you get a test done like the GI map test, that you work with someone who knows what the hell they're doing. Because
the test is only as good as the person that's interpreting it.
Yes, and I know that you are very good at interpreting it. So you could walk us through, if someone buys the GI map interpretation package, what they get with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new package that I've actually introduced. And it's a really good starting point for anyone that, for those people that feel like they've built a good foundation, they're doing all the right things, they really want those concrete answers as to what's going on in their gut. And so with this package, you get a GI map test, super easy to complete. It's sent to their house. They complete it. They send it back to the lab. And then what they get with that is an in-depth interpretation from myself. So I do a video interpretation and I walk you through exactly what your results are. And the thing is, when I started to get into GI map testing, it becomes an obsession because there's so many patterns that you can see, and there's so many different combinations, and it can just give so much insight into the rest of the body as well. Even though we're just looking at the large intestine, it can kind of give clues and things about what's going on overall as well. But you get a video interpretation where I ramble on about that. And then also a PDF kind of going through and being super nerdy and in depth with all of your results. And then you also get a 4-week customized protocol based on the results findings. And as well, I have you complete an intake form and symptom analysis, because it's always important to look at results alongside symptoms. As much as I love the GI map, it is still a technology, right? So we want to make sure that we're pairing it alongside symptoms to really get a full understanding of what's going on. And this is a really good starting point for anyone that, especially if you just feel like you're piecing together random information and nothing's really seeming to work. This is a concrete treatment plan that is customized specifically for you and the imbalances that are going on in the gut. And it's a really good starting point to just kind of get the ball rolling with.
I totally agree. I did my GI map test kind of late in the game. I was similar to you where I was guessing, it was SIBO, Candida, whatever else I did. And yeah, maybe I saw a little bit of improvement, but then it would come back, or I was still bloated, but other things were gone. And I actually did an episode not that long ago on my take on the different tests that I've done during my gut health journey. And I believe I said the only one that I truly thought was worth it was the GI map, because it gives you so much information. And I wish that I did that at the very beginning and not just like a year and a half ago, because it could have saved me a lot of money on supplement protocols and all this other stupid things that I did because I didn't know what I was dealing with. And I had doctors and naturopaths telling me, try this, try that. So I do recommend, if you want to go the testing route, that is a great test to start with. It's very detailed, but you do need to make sure you're working with someone who can interpret it for you. So when you do the interpretation and you give your clients the protocols, what do the protocols typically entail?
It entails the full rounded approach. So it's going to include diet, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations, because I always say you can't do just supplements alone. And you can be taking all of the right supplements, like the top of the notch, best supplements, but if you're not addressing diet and lifestyle, then the protocol isn't going to be effective. So it makes sure to include all of those recommendations, and it's specific to what your needs are. So is stress a factor that we really need to address? Is this person a type A personality where we really need to focus on nourishing the nervous system? Are there other kind of lifestyle factors? Maybe they don't have a really good morning or nighttime routine, things like that. And a lot of the time, I'm going to be honest, the clients that come to work with me, they're kind of at the end of their rope. They're at their wits' end. They're like, I just want answers. I want to run this test, figure out what's going on. And they have a really good diet. Like a lot of the time, they're eating all of the right things. So maybe at that point, it's just limiting certain foods that are contributing to inflammation while we work on healing. But I always stress that those type of diets are very temporary, because it's not, the goal is to add foods in and eat a whole foods diet instead of just restricting things long term. So that's really the approach that the protocols take.
I love that you address all of it. It's not just eat these things and take this supplement. It's how are you sleeping? How are you managing stress? Do you move at all during the day? Because that is so important. And a lot of us think, our problem comes from what we eat, what food is triggering my issue, or what supplement is going to save my life. But as you said, a lot of clients that come to me also eat very healthy, and I would argue they eat too healthy. They don't eat enough calories in a day, period, because they're afraid of food. They eat just broccoli. Broccoli's the only thing they can eat because it's like, I know I'm safe with broccoli. And honestly, most people can't eat it if they have.
Usually a big one.
But you know what I mean? So yes, it is very important to address all the other things and then add food and not take it away. So I love that your protocols aren't take all these foods away and do low FODMAP for 3 years.
No, absolutely. I would never put anyone through the trouble that I went through following that diet. I wouldn't want anyone else to go through that. So even when it comes to these type of things, like if we do find that there's candida present, if we do find that there's SIBO, or maybe like following that low FODMAP diet is going to be beneficial, it's always for a short period of time. I'm so liberal when it comes to those type of diets as well, because yes, there's a template for these diets, but not everyone's going to be the same. For example, some people might be able to tolerate certain high FODMAP foods, which is completely fine. If that's the case, if you don't notice a worsening of symptoms, if you don't notice that they aggravate anything, then have it. There's nothing to say that it needs to be so strict and concrete, because that's where taking the individual approach to these protocols is so important. It's not just like a cookie cutter, here's the foods to eat, here's what to eliminate. It's so much more than that. And I think when people do get that customized treatment plan is where they're like, okay, this was designed specifically for me and what's going on in my body.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I totally agree that doing the GI map test is a great place to go if you're completely stuck and you've been trying for years and you're like, oh my God, I need answers. I want hard facts in front of me. But the reality is that not everyone has the money. So what would be something you would say to people who maybe they want the GI map, maybe they're saving for it, maybe they don't want it, I don't know. But what are some tips you would give to people who have like bloating, gas, digestive issues? They don't know the exact cause, but things that you've found in your practice that generally do help a lot of people. It might not cure them, but it helps.
Honestly, building a foundation, building a strong digestive foundation. If you nail that, you can notice 80% improvements in your symptoms. And that's going to be things like nourishing your nervous system. So if you're someone who's a type A personality, you find that you are stressed frequently, all of those sort of things, taking into account certain practices in your daily routine that are really going to help calm your nervous system on a daily basis, because this has a huge impact on digestion. This is going to look different for everyone. I'm someone who, like I've mentioned, I'm a type A personality, but I cannot meditate. I can't do any of those things. It's just not for me. So something that works for me is breath work. Breath work is something I try to do on a daily basis. But again, this is going to look different for everyone. Another really good one to supporting the foundations is supporting gastric juices. So that's going to be things like stomach acid and bile production, even enzymes as well. So really good things to help with that is going to be, you can add things like apple cider vinegar diluted in water. You can do digestive bitters. Starting your morning with warm lemon water is another great one. Eating without distractions is a huge one too. Because if you're eating too fast, it can dilute stomach acid production, not give your body enough time to produce those gastric juices. So putting all of those practices into place, doing daily movement, getting sun exposure, all of those basic things that I honestly took for granted when I was going through my gut healing journey. I was like, just give me the right supplements and it'll cure everything. And I was so wrong, because I noticed that the supplements would only get me so far. And it wasn't until I sat down and I was like, I need to nail this foundation. I need to make sure I'm eating predominantly a whole foods diet. And I really stopped victimizing food. I looked at, okay, let's make sure that a majority of my diet is whole foods based, instead of being like, oh, I can't have broccoli or cauliflower or all of these other things because they might be high FODMAP or all of this. And addressing stress as well. Like those were definitely my big ones. And like I said, if you just build that foundation, that can take you so far. And like I said, a lot of the time, people that come to work with me, they have that foundation. They're frustrated. They're like, I've done all the right things. They just need to get to the finish line. And that's usually where we investigate and look further into what's going on through testing.
That is so important. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think that we all want the quick fix. I mean, it's natural, right? Like in your case, you suffered for 7 years. In mine, it was like between 5 and 6. So at that point, you're like, just give me the answer. I don't want to do, like, I don't want to go and look at the sun. I want a supplement and I want it now. So I don't blame these people for wanting a quick fix. You know, it makes sense. But we are telling you, with years of experience, there is no quick fix. I am so sorry to break it to you. There's not. You need to do the work. You need to do the breath work. You need to get the morning sunlight. You need to do the things, and you will feel better. I always say, you know, try the basics first, because it's free for the most part, and it starts you developing healthy habits. And if you're still stuck, move on to testing. You know, don't start guessing and being like, take this supplement, take that supplement. You know, get some hard facts and work with someone who can interpret that for you. You work with clients who don't do testing, or is it just functional testing for you?
So I started my practice where functional testing wasn't a requirement. So it was a lot of kind of just based on symptoms. We kind of built really strong foundation. It was more so developing healthier lifestyle habits, cleaning up the diet, focusing on stress and things like that. And maybe based on symptoms, I'd be able to be like, okay, I suspect that there might be candida present. So we might do like a candida cleanse or something like that. There were people that 100% they found relief from doing that. But then there was the people that were in my situation who I resonated a lot with, where they did all that and they were like, I'm still not at that 80 to 100% mark. I want to get to the finish line. So that's where I really shifted my practice and focused a lot on functional testing for those people that are really just frustrated and want to find those answers.
Yeah, and that's awesome too, because there's obviously everybody's in a different stage, right? So if you're just starting your journey and you want to try making some shifts yourself, I totally encourage that. I wish that's what I did at the beginning.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck, if you're really stuck and you need help and you want answers, Maryanne's your girl. So can you please tell us where we can find you, and if people would like to order the GI map and have it interpreted by you, how can they do that?
Yeah. So my practice is called Balance with Maryanne. I have a website. You can follow me on Instagram at Balance with Maryanne. And you can order the GI map test right directly through my website. There's also some different packages on there as well. So I created a bloat quiz. So it basically gets an idea of the symptoms that you're experiencing, and it kind of points you in the right direction and gets you started with a starter protocol. So you might have received, maybe someone had told you that you had candida or SIBO or dysbiosis or anything like that in the past. These protocols are really a good starting point to go with. So I always find if people are a little lost, they don't really know where to get started with, those protocols include all of the nutrition, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations to kind of take that first step. And then the GI map interpretation package is really for anyone, like we said, that wants those concrete answers. They want to figure out exactly what's going on. And then I do offer one-on-one coaching as well, where that's a 4-month one-on-one program where we work in tandem with one another. We do bi-weekly check-ins to make sure that you have accountability and you're always on track and seeing improvements towards reaching your health goals. And I have it too where people are a little hesitant. They might be like, I don't want to get started with the one-on-one coaching right away. So I do have it where you can get the GI map test done. And if we find that there's a whole lot going on and it's going to take a little bit more than the 4-week protocol, then they're able to kind of upgrade into the one-on-one coaching.
That's awesome. Because yeah, sometimes you don't want to fully commit because you're like, maybe I can just do this myself. Maybe I don't need that much support.
That would be me. If I was to put myself in my shoes, like when I was going through those gut issues, 110%, that would be me, because you don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're up against and all of these sort of things. So just seeing the answers is such a concrete way to be like, okay, this is my wake-up call to get serious and really start addressing the imbalances and everything that's going on in the gut.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard to trust that someone is going to be able to help you when you've been through it all, because you've seen the doctors, you've seen the naturopaths, you've done this program, this, that, and you haven't seen results. And I say it every time I interview somebody, but I'm going to keep saying it. The people who have been through it and have come out on the other side have proven that they know what's up. Because when I think back to all the doctors and naturopaths and nutritionists that I've seen, none of them went through what I did. None of them had the gut issues. They just learned about it.
Yeah.
But when you've experienced it, it's like, first of all, you care so much more because you're like, I know your pain. Like, I'm feeling it right now looking at you, and I really want to help. And also, like, you've spent 7 years, I spent 5 years going through the motions. We know what works. We know what's a waste of time. I always preach, get help from someone who has been you. Like, where you are right now, find the person who was that and is no longer that, because they can help you and they want to help you. The passion is there 100%. So I definitely recommend you check out Maryanne. And if you're drawn to the GI map, she's your girl. She will interpret it and help you not be so bloated, because I know how much it sucks.
Yes, we both know. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond Bloated podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to share this podcast with your fellow gut goddesses. If you'd like to chat about today's episode, send me a DM on Instagram at beyond.bloated. Until next time, bye!